What's poppin'? What's good? You know what you got, Miss Daisy. Welcome back to another episode of Chatting with Daisy, Season 2, Episode 2. Very excited, I would say very elated. I wouldn't even say I'm very elated right now because I really feel that this topic today is going to not only help me, but it's going to help you guys. So yeah, let's get into it. So today we are talking about emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. So intelligence and maturity are two different things. The intelligence of something is the amount of knowledge you hold on a certain subject, while the maturity is something that people say you gain with time, with age. Knowledge can be gained in a year, or intelligence can be gained in a year, or 2 years or whatever. Maturity is something that kind of happens over maybe a longer period of time. You go through puberty, you gain maturity through puberty. Puberty can last from you're 13 years old all the way up until you're friggin' 18 or 19, depending on the person. Sometimes our brains take longer to develop than other people, which is okay. Everyone goes through it differently, and sometimes we don't reach a state of maturity later on in life because some of us have to grow up a little earlier in life, while some of us have that leisure where we can grow up and be able to be a child, but not everyone has that opportunity. So everyone's experience is different. No experience is better than the other or worse than the other. They're both, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? There's no comparison at all. It's just that some grow up more faster than others, and that's okay. Or I shouldn't say grow up, mature faster than others. So emotional intelligence. So for me, I guess I'll talk on my standpoint first. Maturity for me, emotional intelligence has been something that I've been obviously practicing my whole entire life. From when you're a child, a baby, I would even say, you are crying because you're upset. You are crying because you want to be fed. You cry when you want to be held. You cry when you want to come out of your car seat or your carriage or your crib. That is the first emotional intelligence we use. It's our voices, vocal sounds that we make, gestures, and it's up to our parents to kind of decipher that emotional intelligence. It's at a very standstill. It's the first thing we knew is sound, right? Then as you get older, you're starting to mimic, right? You're saying words, you're shaking your head, you're saying no, you're saying yes, you're beginning to use actual words. And that's how your emotional intelligence starts to, get up and up and up and up. And as we go to school, we're, especially in kindergarten, my mom's a kindergarten teacher. She is actually early childhood educator. She deals with children and kind of teaches them, okay, how, we don't throw the toy when we are upset. How can we then, retrace our steps there, and what else can we do differently instead of throwing the toy and possibly hitting somebody or hurting ourselves? So as we get older and we go through school and we go through life, our emotional intelligence rises with us. Not everyone is able to, at this age, like even older, are able to properly delve into their emotions and learn how to, maturely or intelligently, show how they feel or express how they feel. Not everyone was in a comfortable space where they were able to express how they feel without judgment, ridicule, and whatever else may come along with that. But most times it is judgment. So for me, I feel like my emotional intelligence has always been pretty good. Like, I don't think that, or has definitely grown with me as a person, I should say. I did reach points where I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. I feel like everyone goes through this reset button in high school where we kind of go through this, okay, wait, now my body is changing. So I kind of still feel like I'm a child, but I want to be seen as an adult. And you kind of go through this push and pull, this tug of war of, do I continue the old paradigm or do I begin this new paradigm? And we kind of go through something called this kind of ego death. I wouldn't even call it an ego death. Well, it is an ego death because as a child, in your eyes, it's me. I need this now, I want this now, this, that, and the third. As a child, you're still understanding the world and what's going on and whatever. As a child, it's okay to be seen as, I'm the be all and end all. I'm the child, you know what I mean? Like, you had me. But anyway, ego's not bad, but we go through this ego death. I'm not saying that the ego completely dies off and you never have ego ever again. It's just the kind of a rebirth of your ego. And essentially, the ego itself is necessary for all the components to work in conjunction. If one piece is missing, it's no longer working in a conjunction anymore. If your higher self is missing or your lower self is missing, oh, I'm so sorry, I keep hitting you. Here we go. Your lower self is whatever. If something's missing, it's not working in conjunction, and your emotional intelligence and emotional maturity won't be able to evolve with you. So it's important that we don't dismiss parts of ourselves. That's also a part of emotional intelligence. We can't dismiss parts of ourselves because we don't understand them in the moment. It's important for us to analyze the aspects of the self that we don't understand, because those are the moments that are going to matter. I feel like, in high school, especially, all of us go through that, this kind of ego death, this kind of awakening of self, understanding who we are, finding who we are without judgment of other people, or people telling us this is who you are, our parents, and kind of meeting friends, and kind of the birds of a feather flock together kind of feel. You're kind of like figuring it out. Who do you want to be? What kind of crowd do you want to be a part of? Like, what kind of subjects are you most interested in now? Because you're now narrowing it down, right? You kind of start out very wide. The spectrum is very wide. And as we get older, unfortunately, when it comes to the school system and the job, the workforce, your horizon begins to narrow in. And at this point, you're now almost hitting the bottleneck, because you're going into high school. You're going through high school, and eventually you hit the tip, right? The tip of the pyramid. And the tip of the pyramid is essentially your ascension journey, right? Because you start here and you come up and you raise, right? You come up high, you create this pyramid of self. So it's not saying that the pyramid's like over, there's a root, because it's a diamond shape. So yes, there's a root at the bottom where you first began, and you kind of branched yourself out as you got, as you grew up as a child, or expanding your horizon, understand that the world is so much bigger than it is. And then as we get older, it's like, okay, well, now you need to be an adult. So then you come back to that, okay, well, I gotta be this, I gotta do this, and I have to keep myself focused. There's nothing else. Like, it's kind of like we kill off our childlike spirits. Not everybody. Like, I know a lot of people that are still in the childlike spirit, which is amazing. Not everyone can say that they're still feel like heart of a child kind of deal. But I do feel that high school that has a way of killing off some of people's childlike spirit. Because emotional intelligence is not just about knowing how you feel, it's also understanding how you feel. Because as I always say, the how is never as important as the why. Because you could say, well, how did this happen? Why did this happen? And the why ultimately always answers the how. Because you start telling the story of why it happened, and you get into more details, opposed to how it's just, okay, well, yeah, that's how it happened. Oh, okay. But you don't understand the context. Well, then why did it happen then? Like, I don't understand. So it's important that when you're analyzing your emotions, you're asking yourself questions, legitimate questions, and you're not lying to yourself about these answers. Like, it baffles me that, myself included, lied to ourselves about how we're feeling. But in our head, we damn well know that that's not how we're feeling. You know what I'm saying? Like, we be lying to ourselves a lot. And especially when you're in the early stages of awakening, and the early stages of becoming an emotional, mature person. So let's move into emotional maturity. So emotional maturity is not just being self-aware and mindful of your emotions and how you're perceived as the way you speak, how it's perceived to other people, like your tone. A big thing is tone. No matter how you may say something, like you can say, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Like, you can say it so many different ways. You can say many words, so many different ways. Oh shit wasn't the greatest example, but that's all I had in my head right now. So, but you get the point. You can say things many different ways, and it can be taken as well many different ways. So I've always noticed that when it comes to email, when it comes to texting, when it comes to those kind of things where you're not verbally saying something to somebody, it's like over a message, things are always taken negatively before they're taken positively. I don't quite understand the logic behind. I do understand the logic behind it, because you're automatically thinking you're going to self-judge before you give anyone the benefit of the doubt, which is, most people, because of the amount of trauma and lack of trust and lack of faith we have in humanity at the moment. I'm joking. But, You get the point. Like, you're gonna judge before you trust most times. It's not something that we want to do. It's just when it comes to certain things, especially if the subject is touchy. If you're having an argument over text message, something can come off way worse than how it was actually meant to be perceived. But that is worse when you're actually saying it. So it's important that when you're saying certain things, especially if you're giving constructive criticism, how you're saying it, the words that you're choosing is all a part of emotional maturity. So that's kind of the external point of emotional maturity. Understanding how you're speaking, the words you're choosing to say, your body language, it's all a part of emotional maturity. And then the internal part of emotional maturity is you understanding, oh, this person's not trying to hurt me. Yes, they may trigger me, but they're not actually doing what I think they're doing. This is just an aspect of myself that I've been healing, that I need to understand that, hey, this person is not trying to hurt me. They have given me no reason to see why they're hurting me. I am drawing conclusions. And this is where the whole delusion of drawing conclusions come from. Everyone has done it, I myself included, where we draw these conclusions based on the past, especially when it comes to partners and relationships, platonic and romantic. So it's important that you can decipher what is real versus what is not real. What is reality? So for example, I'll use my boyfriend as an example. We'll get in an argument and there's something that has bothered me. For example, I don't like it when he leaves his toothbrush on the counter. And he's never done it before. And the one time he does do it, I'm like, yo, like, my ex used to do that and it used to piss me the fuck off. Like, it just used to make me so upset, so mad all the time, and you're doing that. And then you get in a whole argument and it was only that one time that they actually did something that may or may not have been intentional. So it's important that when we are delving into, external maturity and internal maturity, that they work in conjunction, because your emotional maturity will be able to read and be into a situation and be like, when was the last time that they've ever actually done that? Is this a consistent thing, or is this something that just happened today and it probably won't happen again? Or am I just, overreacting, I hate that word overreacting because I don't believe anyone overreacts. I feel like that's a gaslight when someone says, oh, you're overreacting. That's a big gaslight, I think personally, because it's like, I'm not overreacting. I'm reacting how I feel like I should react right now based on the emotions I'm feeling. So that's just me, but everyone's different, of course. But when it comes to, understanding our triggers, I feel like the best way to identify a trigger is to stop and think before you react. Yes, it's easier said than done, but I feel like when you start to think about what you're getting upset about and where it traces back to in your past, you'll start to realize there was no connection, it's just something similar. For example, leaving the toothbrush on the counter. Yeah, your ex or whatever, worst case scenario, they did that many times and it pissed you off and you told them many times not to do it, and then your new partner now does it once or maybe twice in like a blue moon and it pisses you off and it raises an argument because of what happened in the past. But in reality, they never actually intended, like, it was never something that they did intentionally. It was just something that happened off a whim, like once or twice, opposed to like all the time and someone doing it out of spite or pettiness, right? So it's not a very good example of a toothbrush, but you get what I'm trying to say. Like, something that in your past that, especially in romantic relationships, it tends to pop up, these triggers, is because when we're in a romantic relationship, that person is literally seeing the ins and outs. Yes, friendships with other people, platonic friendships, are kind of the same way, but when it's a romantic relationship, there's sex involved. You know what I mean? They're seeing you at a raw state. They're seeing more of you without having to say too much. You see what I'm saying? When you're with your platonic friends, they are seeing you for who you are. Yes, maybe they've seen you naked, whatever. But when it comes to those romantic relationships, it's a deeper dive into your sensual energy. So, I mean, like, when you think about both emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, they're pretty much the same thing. Emotional intelligence tends to be just our amount of knowledge we know of ourselves and others, that we can mindfully answer and listen. I think mindful listening is underrated. We listen to react, not listen to understand. Not everyone does this, and we've all been a victim of listening to react, not listening to understand. As much as we want to say, now we're doing, of course, congrats to us, but it was a point where we were listening to react. So think back to those moments and think, okay, when I used to listen to react, what were things that would gaslight me, trigger me? How can I combat those emotions and transmute that energy into something more positive? Instead of reacting and screaming and yelling, because I think screaming and yelling gets nobody anywhere, because I will tune you out if you start yelling in my face. Because at this point, I'm just like, all right, it just seems like you're reacting from a lower vibration. Let's talk at a mid vibration where we can both meet each other and talk calmly. So that's me personally, but when it comes to those type of conversations, it's important and crucial to identify your triggers and understand that your triggers have nothing to do with them. Nothing, like absolutely nothing. They have nothing to do with your past. They are only in your present. And it's important to focus on the present, because that way you won't be looking into past trying to dig up information that you can bring into the present, which can ultimately, well, not ruin the future with that person or with an opportunity or whatever you're trying to do, but taint it a bit to the point where you are going to be more skeptical and more doubtful about it, opposed to being more optimistic and excited. So it not only helps you, but it helps the relationships that you start to build with others, especially if you're beginning, you've not changed yourself, but you've grown, you've allowed yourself to raise into a higher vibration, you've went into your spiritual isolation period and you're coming out and you're trying to make new friends. It's important that you come in with new energy with your thought process as well. Just as important is to heal the trauma, it's important to then transmute that into the way we speak, because our voices are what we use to project our emotions. Outside of body language, outside of facial expressions, our voices are key of also telling others how we feel, especially when, it may be a debate and it's not supposed to be something, where you're starting to get upset and emotional over something. It's just someone's trying to tell you something about how they feel. Especially, I think the biggest thing for myself, what I've learned, because when I've gone through my past relationships, not just with romantic but platonic, is that when people tell me how they feel about certain things, I used to take personal offense to how they're feeling about something. So they'll be like, oh, I didn't like this, that you did, that, whatever the case was. And I would be like, I get emotionally, I'd have an emotional blockage, and I'd stop listening to what they're saying, and I'd hang on to the one thing that made me feel down. And I think we've all been a victim to that, because nobody wants to hear that they're being not kind to someone that they do care about, right? Nobody wants to hear something like that. But it's important that we listen, because when we listen, we understand and identify what is happening. That I think personally that it's never anyone's fault. I think it's regardless of this person did that to that person. There's no faults in a relate, because it's faults, right? It's a word, it's a spelling. A fault, right? Something that's broken, there's a hole, something fell through, it's a fault. There's no faults. I just feel like there definitely are little bumps, and we get through them together. We don't get through them alone. So it's important that if you're in that predicament, you work together to combat that. And if you start saying, well, I did this, you start thinking, because you're like, oh yeah, I remember that I did that, I'm sorry. And then you take accountability, and then you're like, well, I think I did that, or I know I did that because of the way that this made me feel in that moment. And then you start to delve deeper in, and then that communication then transmute into, well, now we understand each other, and now I feel like I can trust you a lot more to come to you about my emotions, opposed to getting upset, getting angry when someone tells you how they feel. There's just two different outcomes, because you can either end being upset and angry, or end feeling relieved and feeling, okay, well, I'll be more mindful of that. It doesn't mean to beat yourself up. And I've been a victim of beating myself up because of things that I did that necessarily I didn't notice I was doing, but did hurt the person. So I feel like that's very important. But, oh, sorry, that's my cat. He just fell. You okay? But yeah, so that is all I have today on emotional intelligence and emotional maturity. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Once again, I want to hear from you guys what your perspective is on emotional maturity and emotional intelligence, and how you've combated that, and how you're continuing to combat, or how you're going to begin to do it. I want to hear your perspective, so please comment down below. Please start a conversation. I'd love to hear what you have to say, because I feel like when I hear y'all, I feel like we're truly growing together. And this is what the channel is about: growing mindfully and intuitively together, and healing as well. But like I said, we are healed We are no longer saying I'm healed. If you were going to say I am, you're going to say I am, you're going to say I am healed. You're not going to say I am healing, because you are. Everything with manifestation is saying that you are right now in this moment. This is what you are. And you could say, well, I'm healing though. If you continue to say that, you're going to be healing for the rest of your life. You're not going to be healed ever. So when you continue to change your language and the way you manifest in your mind as well as verbally, you start to see real changes in your life, because then you're going to start to believe that, and the energy around you is going to start to fizzle it out so that you can see clear. You know what I'm saying? But anyways, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for supporting me. Make sure you guys comment, save this video, subscribe wherever it's going to be posted on YouTube and a little bit on Instagram. So make sure you guys check that out, and I'll see you in the next video.